And good evening, everybody, and welcome to Going Nuclear, full blown coverage of the land. I am Ethan Greenberg, and joining me now is new co host of the podcast, Mike Rasinski. Mike, a fellow Kent Stater from long ago. How are you doing, sir? Welcome to the show.
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Excited to be on any show where we get to talk Cleveland sports.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of places that talk about Cleveland sports, but I'd like to think that we'll take a unique perspective to this, or I don't know. I don't know if I'm that unique. So
We'll, we'll try our best, that's for sure.
we will try our best. We have definitely seen a lot in our times. Again, we're the same age as we, entered Kent State in the fall of '97 there. So we've experienced all these same things growing up as Cleveland sports fans. And, you know, history hasn't been kind to Cleveland sports. It
No.
no, not so much. But I will say this, as the two of us, neither of us live in Northeast Ohio anymore. And we've been away from Northeast Ohio for a long time. We've both got, family and kids. How spoiled were we growing up in Northeast Ohio to be so close to three major professional sports teams, to have the Cavs, the Browns, the Indians, and slash Guardians? Did we take that for granted?
I think a little bit. And I think what's unique about that too is I understand Cleveland is still the smallest market to have those three sports. And there are numerous times throughout, the history of those sports that they were all of the teams, and one of them did leave, were contemplating leaving. Um, But I think that also established why we have such a strong fan base, a strong Cleveland fan base. Because, like you said, both of us left, after college, Northeast Ohio, but both of us follow Cleveland sports, and all. It's a great way to just stay connected to your hometown, and I think you can tell all the Browns backers bars that are out throughout the country and actually overseas is just one example of how people like to stay connected with Cleveland sports, and it kind of brings the community together. But yes, to answer your question, yes, I think we did take it for granted, and we're probably a little spoiled, even though our teams may not have been treating us right all these years.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how much heartbreak did we really have to go through? Obviously Michael Jordan taunted us and haunted us. John Elway did the same. And, for much of our lives, up until the mid 90s, the Indians were just hapless. They were terrible. And then all of a sudden, the mid 90s, all of that young talent came together, and then they built the new stadium, and all of a sudden they were at the center of the Cleveland sports universe, especially because then Art Modell ripped the Browns out of
Mhm.
Cleveland and moved to Baltimore. So, long story short, there, I think that I've gained a greater appreciation for what we got to experience living and growing up in Northeast Ohio. And again, I having children, my oldest, my son being 13, going on 14, getting him into that, and the fact that he's really latched onto the Browns. Not the Cavs, Guardians, not as much right at this point, but definitely a Browns fan, and that has been a tremendous uh, bonding experience. I don't know if you've had that with any of your children.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. So I have three boys as well, 11, 8, and 3. And they are growing up to be Cleveland sports fans. But let me ask you this. Are you guilty for making them Cleveland sports fans and possibly suffering like this last generation has had to suffer that have been Cleveland sports fans? We got to see the good times. This latest generation has not.
Not so much, not yet. And that's a good and fair question, because I do think about that sometimes. But what I have found is, I think that I've learned a lot of good lessons about humility and appreciation for the victories that you do get, because they don't come all the time. We're not in New York or whatever market is winning all the time. We didn't grow up, we weren't rooting for Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, Patriots. We weren't rooting for Derek Jeter, Yankees, whatever, or the Boston Celtics of yesteryear, whatever it is. So when our teams have won, and the only championship we have to show for it in Cleveland is 2016. It was amazing. I took my son at the time. Jacob was 5, going on 6. I put him in the car and we drove to Ohio for the championship parade. And we went with my dad and my brother and his oldest daughter came into town, and it was magical. He may not remember it, but we've got the pictures, and that memory will always be there. Heck, we even got a picture of, he's in a picture. I don't think he was so keen on it, but with Buckeye Guy. You know, it's pretty amazing stuff. I'm sure he saw and heard some things there. I don't know.
Oh yeah. So you and I were there at the same time. So at that time in our lives, we were living over in the Philippines, and we came back for our summer break
Oh
to
wow.
still live in Northeast Ohio. We flew in 2 hours prior to the start of Game 7. I
Oh
was going to be delayed and we were going to miss it, but we made it and we got to watch it. And then 2 days later, or whenever it was, called up a couple high school buddies and we drove up and we probably bumped into you somewhere at the parade. So we were there as well.
yeah, just an amazing experience. And then to think the Indians were on the precipice.
Mm,
Oh, so.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a, well, what's the word? It kind of a reality check. I
Yeah.
mean, of sorts. I remember sitting in the dorm at Kent State, our freshman year, fall '97, watching Game 7 by myself, watching against the Marlins, and yeah, that was
Can,
just not
can
good.
you, that's the last two World Series the Indians were in. Extra
Yeah,
Game 7. I mean, that just sums up Cleveland sports right there.
it does. It definitely does, and it's just again one of those things where you learn to appreciate the victories. You don't take them for granted. I know people. I see people on social media, and it seems like they just expect the teams to win all the time, and that's not going to be the case. And so you really have to savor the victories.
Mhm.
Speaking of which, I don't know if you were aware of this, and I was aware of this because I grew up a big soccer fan. The Cleveland Crunch just won the MLIS championship on Sunday, 9-4 over Omaha. Um, I've got in my background there, I've got a Hector Marinero jersey that I won just by chance, had the right ticket at a game, and went down on the field, and I landed and ended up getting up Hector Marinero jersey. And I was there for 2 championship games at the Convocation Center in Cleveland, and that was when the Crunch was part of the highest level at that point. I think it might have been still NPSL at that point, but people seem to forget and not realize, hey, we've got some other teams that have won championships. Remember, in fact, the Monsters won the Calder Cup and were part of the parade.
That's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
I mean, you had J.R. Smith shirtless. You had Machine Gun Kelly. The monsters are out there. That I mean, what an amazing day! Just a phenomenal day. I don't think though the city of Cleveland was as well prepared for that as they possibly could have been. Trying to get back on the Rapid at Tower City, yeah, that was not so good.
Well, let me ask you this question, and
Sure.
maybe this is a topic for another show, but who's gonna the next parade gonna be for?
Oh my goodness. Well, so the question you're asking is which team is closest to a
Yep.
championship? All right, so let's take a look here. And this is a great segue because we are going to go and we are going to talk about the Cavaliers here in just a moment. And you know what we're going to talk about?
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs?
Yes, yes,
Never gets
it doesn't. It never gets old. But we're going to talk about playoffs, Jim Mora. So I think that, gosh, wow, that's a difficult question. Each team has its own issues. So if we look at it, we're going to have to wait and see for the Browns. What is Deshaun Watson going to be for the Browns? And that's where this team will go. If he cannot bring his game up to somewhere close to what he was in Houston, the Browns are going to have a hard time competing with the top level teams in the AFC. When you're competing, first of all, the AFC North is absolutely stacked between, with the Ravens and and the Bengals getting Joe Burrow back. The Steelers, as you and I were chatting a little bit ago here, certainly the quarterback room has changed. They got rid of everybody from last year's quarterback room, and they bring in Russell Wilson, a veteran who's at the tail end of his career, and then you get Justin Fields. So they're always going to be good and tough. I think the road for the Browns is going to be very, very difficult. Then I look at the Guardians. The Guardians right now this is an unexpected start, I think, for most of us. In my mind, I'm saying unexpected. And I think most people around Cleveland are kind of like, what's going on? Now I'm looking at who they've played so far. Obviously, they start out the season in Oakland. That's a pretty good way to start the season, amazingly enough. It's been a house of horrors at times, but Oakland is in disarray. They've got a mess there. Then to go to Seattle and take 2 out of 3 from the Mariners, that's a big victory. Golly, that place has been awful to us, especially, all the days of Ichiro. I mean, he killed us. You come home, you win a couple games with division rival Minnesota. You take 2 out of 3 from the White Sox. The White Sox are a disaster this year. And you lose 2 out of 3 to New York. And you go to Boston, you win 3 of 4. Guardians with the 5-4 victory today. So they are starting off very well. I think that they have a good chance of making the playoffs. Let's put it that way. And once you get in the major leagues, I feel like you've got a chance. The key for them is going to be health. Obviously, Shane Bieber going down after 2 amazing starts sucks. And we're going to need to see how the remainder of the pitching rotation falls into place. If guys that were really spot on last year, like Tanner Bybee and Gavin Williams and Logan Allen, if they can keep it up, how is Tristan McKenzie going to be? Is he going to return to form? Health of that rotation is going to be key. And then lastly, but not leastly, is there going to be enough hitting? Right now, they're spot on. They are doing a great job. The run differential is right up there, and they're playing out of their minds. In my opinion, you can't take away. Look, you can only play who's on the schedule, right? And then finally, you talk about the Cavs, and let's get into the Cavs. All right, Mike. So the Cavs last year win 51 games. They go to the first round of the playoffs. The year before, they had gotten knocked out in the play-in. They pick up Donovan Mitchell in a big trade, and they get 51 wins. We're like, all right, people are feeling confident. And the Knicks just completely bullied the Cavs and took them out of their game. They never looked comfortable. And we got the gentleman's sweep, the 4-1, loss to New York last year in the playoffs. So I don't know about you, and I'd love to know your thought. So after that, coming into this season, how are you feeling about the Cavs?
I was feeling good, to tell you the truth. I was feeling good. 51 wins last year.
Mm-hmm.
You improve the lineup with Strus and Yang. You know that the younger guys, like the Mobleys, are going to get better. At least you hope so.
Right.
So I came season with a lot of expectations. Now, halfway through the season, when we started having the injuries, I got nervous, especially when Mobley and when they were both out. But that actually turned out to be a blessing, and the team to work without them, and they were great. Now, granted, the schedule at the time they went out was not the best, but like you said before, you can only play who's in front of you.
Exactly.
And then Mitchell gets hurt, and it's a whole different ball game. So that has me nervous because even when he's come back, he has not looked the same. And the Cavs, obviously, anybody can see, are not the same without Mitchell. So a lot of the playoffs are going to depend on how he is performing.
Right. And honestly, and again, we're going to get into this matchup and talk about how we've arrived at the matchup against the Orlando Magic and what our expectations are. I'm going to be honest in saying, on one hand, I could see us getting knocked out by the Magic because of the style of ball that they play and just my uneasiness with which Cavs team is going to show up. Is it going to be the team that has great ball movement, has wide open 3-point shots, has Mitchell, creating offense? That's I need to see that. Or am I going to see guys? Am I going to see one-on-one matchups where either Garland or Mitchell is dribbling down the clock to like 10 on the shot clock and then trying to drive crazy into the lane, turning the ball over? Am I going to see Mobley and Allen get beat up on the backboards? I need to know which version of this team I'm going to see. And as I was saying, I could just as easily see them getting knocked out by Orlando as I could potentially see them making a run. And let me tell you why. Boston has its flaws in as much as they dominated the East this year. As I don't know, I think I've heard this probably from many people, but I recall maybe Brian Windhurst say this. They kind of play with their food. And they, just like they did in Cleveland, a few weeks back when they blew a 20-point lead and lost the game. And we've seen it happen often with them. I know that we don't have LeBron James on our side to defeat them, but the Cavs don't match up horribly with Boston. It's going to take a lot of work, but you never know. And we don't know what's going to happen on the other side of the bracket. Because right now, as it stands, you've got Milwaukee with an injured Giannis taking on, who's going to miss some time, taking on the Pacers. And you've got New York taking on the 76ers with a less than 100% Joel Embiid. Although I think that they're vastly improved simply by not having Doc Rivers as coach. So, who knows what's going to happen? Anything could happen. And then the real question becomes, even if we could somehow make it out of the East, who, if anybody, would we stand a chance against out of the West? The top out West is going to be pretty difficult. I really favor the veterans in Denver to have the inside track to come out of the West, but certainly Minnesota and OKC are dangerous. So let's talk about the big news story here before we get to the actual matchup was, as I said, how we arrived here. On Sunday afternoon, the final day of the NBA regular season, the Cavs go in to take on the Hornets. The Cavs are going to be without Mitchell and Garland. But we've got in the starting lineup, we've still got Strus, Allen, Mobley, got Niang playing, got a number of our other good rotational players. I believe LeVert played. We may have been without Merrill, but, we seem pretty good. And Charlotte stinks and sat everybody. They're trying to position for the NBA draft, right? They want to get the most ping pong balls they can get. And somehow the Cavs lost this game. You go into the fourth quarter, you're leading by 8. And then you sit everybody. Charlotte had all these guys that were playing with house money. And we end up losing by 10 points. And in the timeline, if you're scoreboard watching, the Cavs at one point, Milwaukee was losing, New York was losing. If the Cavs would have won the game, they jumped to the 2 seed because it would have been a 3-way tie. The Cavs would have had the tiebreaker against Milwaukee. They would have then had the tiebreaker for the division, and as a division winner would have jumped the Knicks in that scenario. And so we would have been looking at the 2 seed. As it turned out, we would have ended up with a 3 seed. And I want to thank here, let's see what we've got here. Tyson, he comments, that it's going to be all about Mobley and Allen. Have to man up, not get pushed around like damn children like last year. Thank you, Tyson, for the comment. I concur. It will be. They are going to be a key to this. Definitely a key. So there was a huge fallout. Especially listening to Cleveland sports radio, Twitter. I was ticked. I'm like, this just seems like not the right mentality, because on the one hand, you had folks saying, look, they don't want to face the winner of the 76ers and Heat game. They'd rather play the Magic. But I don't think that's a good attitude.
No, you play to win the games.
Thank you, Herm Edwards.
Yeah, you cannot try to predict and have matchups at the end. You maybe rest players who need the rest, who are on injury, time management. That's fine, but you play to win the game. And the Cavs have had too many of these poor performances over the last month and a half, that it would have been great to see them going into the playoffs on a high note instead of yet again another disappointing finish. Now, with a week off, is that really going to hang over the team? Probably not. But I'd still rather go in with good vibes than a disappointing loss like we've seen a lot lately.
Yeah, I mean, they've gotten their butts kicked on quite a few occasions, especially post All-Star break. The Cavs went 12-17 after the All-Star break. I mean, they had that amazing stretch and run that you mentioned when Garland and Mobley were out. And they were hitting on all cylinders. Again, maybe the opponents weren't the best of the opponents, but you play who's on your schedule. They did a great job, and they looked good doing it. Not just that they were winning. They looked good. They looked comfortable with what they were doing. And I'm not going to try and say that I saw this or that I'm the originator of this. But again, I credit our Kent State alum buddy, Brian Windhurst, talking about one guard, three shooters, one big. And that was working. And so we've got this ongoing discussion that if the Cavs get bounced, or even if they don't get bounced in the first round, there's going to be a discussion about the roster makeup and whether you stick with this core four, what you do, if you move on from people, who do you move on from? Much of that may depend upon what the Donovan Mitchell situation is, because I don't think you move on from him unless he says, I'm out.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that's going to be a great discussion here in the next couple of weeks, no matter how the season turns out. And I think how these playoffs turn out will probably have some determination in what Mitchell's going to do, because he would be wise. If he is going to sign an extension, it'll be this summer. If he doesn't, I don't think he's staying.
No, I don't think so either. And the Cavs will probably look to move him because they don't want to get stuck with nothing. They don't want him just to walk away and they've got nothing to show for it. If he's going to, I think there's also the piece of it that we're going to have to look at, and we will as these playoffs unfold. What's going to happen to JB? Certainly, if they get knocked out in the first round, he's toast. He is done. I can almost assure you that he's done, because to me, he has taken them maybe as far as he can go. I'd love to be wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. But I always go back to in our time looking at what happened in Chicago before Phil Jackson, because you had a lot of the same group of players and they couldn't get over the hump. They couldn't get past Detroit with Doug Collins. They couldn't get, they had trouble with Boston as well. I mean, that whole thing going on there. Then you get Phil Jackson in, and in his second season, they're winning the title. And the rest is history. In LA, they had Del Harris as the coach for Kobe. I don't know who else might have come in between, but then you bring in Phil Jackson. What do you know? It all comes together. And so sometimes I think there is a level that you can be taken to by a better coach. So,
well, think about the Cavs in 2016 too.
Exactly. And that's kind of crazy, because David Blatt, I think his biggest thing was maybe his style didn't fit the team, personality didn't fit the team, and Gilbert brought him in before James said he was coming back, and so for them to move on to Ty Lue, we were very fortunate, very fortunate, and even though they really, I mean, they didn't play as well post Blatt firing. That, it wasn't like they went on this crazy run, but obviously Lou had the right chemistry and he knew how to, the strategy. He knew what buttons to push and how to get the most out of guys. In game 6, bringing in Dante Jones. And I mean, who'd have thunk it? It was
Not me.
crazy. Yeah, never would have thought that. So we shall see. And so let's take a look here. Cavs are going to take on the Orlando Magic in round 1 of the NBA playoffs starting on Saturday. Cavs finish 48-34, Orlando 47-35. The teams split the season series. And Cleveland wins in December 121-111. December 11th, 5 days later, Orlando wins 104-94, and it was another one of those clunker of a quarters.
Mm-hmm.
What was the downfall for the Cavs? They come out and get outscored 30-15 in the third quarter, and that is what troubles me about JB. I feel like these guys come out flat all the time, and then they're digging out of a hole. I don't get it. I just don't get it. And Cavs bounce back then as part of the time frame when Garland and Mobley were down, January 22nd. Cavs beat the brakes off of Orlando, 126-99. But in that last game, the last one that we have in our, ingrained in our memories, back in February, the first game after the All-Star break, Orlando comes into Cleveland, and Mitchell didn't play fine, but we had Mobley, we had Garland. All those guys are back out there. And we lose 116-109. And it wasn't just that we lost, it was the way we lost. They beat us up on the glass. You got Mo Wagner scoring 22 points and Franz Wagner scoring 14 points. It wasn't even like Banchero beat us. And in fact, their other star, and pardon me, might get my brain cramp out here. Who is their Jalen Suggs? He got injured early in the game. How? So I look at that and go, uh-oh, this is not good. What are you feeling or as you look at this matchup?
Yeah, there's definitely some things to worry about. Now, the comment that Tyson made there too about playing tough under the boards, I think that is true for whoever you're going to play.
Exactly.
And it's just magnified in the playoffs. So a lot, I think, is going to be determined on how our bigs play down there. And I'm hoping last year's experience is going to help them this year. Now, one thing I always do like to look at too is how a team comes into the playoffs as well. And one thing I noticed was that the Magic on their last 6 games were just 2-4. And they had losses to the Hornets, the Rockets, the Bucks, and the 76ers, and none of them were close. So they're not coming in on a heater or anything either. So there's something to be said about that. That with the fact that we have home court advantage, I think maybe the X factor in this series as well. So I'm feeling okay about this first round. And I also think playoff experience is going to play a role. Orlando has none. The Cavs at least have last year. And then you bring in a Strus and a Niang who also have playoff experience and success in the playoffs as well to help mentor the younger guys. And I'm hoping that will be a factor that'll help them win. Now, if they come out in game 1 and have a clunker, we'll see. That may change the whole dynamic, the whole makeup of the series. So they have to come out strong, especially at home on Saturday. But I think overall, I feel pretty good about this matchup.
Yeah, and I hear you on that. we also forgot to mention as a player to hopefully, um, help with the younger players on the team to guide us through the playoffs. Double T. Got Tristan Thompson
Very true. Very true.
and Morris. Morris is physical. I like that guy, and I hope he gets some minutes. One thing that we're going to need is the toughness. I think defense is going to carry this team. Defense in the glass. So even if you have a rough shooting night, if you're playing tough defense, and that's going to be very, very important. One of our key cogs defensively throughout the year was Dean Wade. And I think it's been a noticeable absence. First, it was paternity leave, and then I think injury. And it doesn't appear he's going to be playing in game 1. How much does that hurt the Cavs? It feels like he's not a superstar, but he's a key piece.
He is a key piece, and he does bring that defensive toughness. I think having Mitchell and Okoro out there, and our bigs are obviously really good at defense, but having those two smaller guys out there, they're both really good at defense, and I think maybe a little bit underrated too. The problem is you can't sub in a Dean Wade for either of those two to keep it up, throughout the game. So I think we're gonna have maybe some spurts of defenseless play or not as good defense as we're used to seeing. Maybe the silver lining to all this is Wade's been out for a while, and hopefully the Cavs, not that they've had a great record, like you said, 12-17 to finish off the season, but have adapted or at least know how to play without him for a little bit since they've been doing it, and it's not a recent injury.
Exactly. I mean, obviously anybody could go down at any time. We saw, obviously Giannis getting injured right at the end of the regular season. Last night, Jimmy Butler goes down. So even if Miami miraculously, they will have home court if they beat Chicago and then go in as the 8 seed. Butler's out for a few weeks, so I think he would be done for the first round, and that does not bode well for the Heat. And the playoffs really are shaping up quite interestingly. Are you enjoying all the play-in games, especially since we're not participating?
Yeah, actually, I think I'm enjoying them more because we're not participating.
Right.
And I especially enjoyed the Warriors losing a few days ago. That was just that was sweet. I hold grudges, and I am okay with the Warriors not only losing but getting blown out and Klay Thompson scoring exactly 0 points.
Have you ever seen the meme where of Patrick Starr from SpongeBob with Klay Thompson's hair or whatever his face? Seriously, dude, it looks like Patrick
I'll have
Starr.
to look that.
It's classic. It is classic. No, I also hold grudges, and not a fan of theirs. Not a fan of the fact that obviously the way they came together, quite honestly, was pretty impressive. What ticked me off, of course, is when they teamed up with Kevin Durant, and it was like that was just an unfair advantage. I mean, honestly, I think that barring the injuries in 2015, I think the Cavs win that championship. And who knows what would have happened. And then, 2016, obviously, we kind of got payback. Things happened for them that were unforeseen. If I'm getting my brain is, just cramping here. Bogut going down with an injury and Draymond hitting his friend LeBron. How can you be friends with someone and hit him in the nuts?
Well, that's just Draymond. I think he does
it. Seeing him get suspended for a game, that was phenomenal. And obviously there was that epic turn. And, seeing I wasn't there, but our buddy, fellow Kent Stater, Jason Heron, and others I've heard talk about how loud Game 6 was at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. And I could only imagine then, LeBron was up in Curry's head. And then he throws the mouthpiece. That to me is kind of childish. And I see it as poor sportsmanship, honestly.
Yep.
But yeah,
playoffs.
I do take, I agree with you. Definitely good. We'll see how Mike Brown does. And they've got one more game to go because they got to play at the Pelicans. But the Pelicans and injuries, no Zion Williamson. The guy's looking great against LA and pretty much all season, really starting to play well. Maybe not to the level everyone thought he was going to be, when he was drafted, but he's playing really well. And then a hamstring injury. I'm like, oh, just you got to feel for the guy there, and we shall see what happens. And one thing I found in comparing coaches for the Cavs, JB, I look at him and the way he coaches and how he adapts. I look at him. I look at what Mike Brown's time here was, or time with the Cavs was. There were often times, especially in the playoffs against Orlando, when we looked absolutely clueless and unable to adapt, and they're kicking the ball out, and Rashard Lewis and Hito Turkoglu are draining triples all over us. We had no business losing that series. It ruined the matchup that would have been between Kobe and LeBron in the finals.
Yeah. Do you think, not to get off topic here, Mike Brown has evolved as a coach? Because sometimes the coaches need to go through these growing pains too, almost like we say LeBron had to grow up the Cavs before he started winning championships too.
No, I think you're onto something there. I definitely think you're onto something. It's not many coaches get to go and have success immediately. And it's not until they reach their second or third stop that they finally get it. And the good thing for Mike Brown is he got to work. I mean, he was on the bench with the Warriors for a number of years there. And I think that was great experience for him. And then there were times where Kerr was out because he was having health issues. And so he was at the helm. And, he has done really fantastic out in Sacramento. But yeah, I think he was one of those guys who I felt he took the Cavs to a certain level and then couldn't get over the hump. And part of that was roster construction too. Part of that was certainly roster construction for the Cavs in not being able to get past Orlando when they were the better team. Although they obviously made it to the finals. The year before, I'm trying to get all my years straight. If that was, I think 2 years.
It's been a while. Yeah,
it has been a while. So that is that, and we're gonna have a lot to find out. Saturday, 1:00, Cavs tip it off against the Orlando Magic from the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Game 2 is then on Monday night. Game 3 will be next Thursday night, 7:00. So they will be on while we are on the air as we are getting ready for the NFL draft, which the Browns will not have a draft pick in the first round. And you know what? That's a great segue. I like that I did that. I think that was a good segue there. So speaking of things that are coming up here, let's talk a little bit about where the Browns are as we face this offseason. We talked a little bit earlier about who do we think is closest to the championship. And so the Browns last year, what they overcame to make the playoffs and finish 11-6, and technically they started 5 quarterbacks. The Driscoll thing was ridiculous, but anyway. But they lost Nick Chubb, the heart and soul of the team, in Pittsburgh. So first of all, in your mind, was that a quote unquote dirty hit by Fitzpatrick?
So not being an expert on this, I rely on what the players say, what some of the experts say, and nobody's claiming it's a dirty hit. So I'm going to just go with that. Nick Chubb said it wasn't a dirty hit. So I'm going to go with that and say no, although it didn't look good.
No, it certainly didn't. It really was. Why are you going at the guy's knee? Why? That just, it seems foul. Maybe it's not. It's very foul there. So you lose your heart and soul in week 2. Then week 3. So, and you literally fumbled that game away. You turned it over. Deshaun Watson blew that game for the Browns. Defense had Pittsburgh just completely clueless. They were doing nothing, absolutely nothing. And Watson fumbles and the pick six, 2 pick sixes. Are you kidding me? Or was it 1 pick six and then the strip sack? I don't even remember. I should try and wipe these things from my memory.
Yeah, let's not remember that game.
Yeah, it was bad. It was very bad. Come back, we had come off the emotional win in Cincinnati. We lose in Pittsburgh, come in, going against Tennessee. And we're all thinking, hey, man, we won. We're looking good. Little did we know it was the start of more drama and the shoulder for Deshaun Watson. And I don't know how much you've kept up with it over the past couple of days because they did do the press, but there's still uncertainty about when the shoulder was injured to the extent and to the extent that it was injured. If it was injured the first time and damaged that badly in the Tennessee game, that makes the Baltimore game look that much more impressive. And the Arizona game, which I took my son, we had gotten tickets. We went into Cleveland. We went and saw the game. Thank goodness we were playing Clayton Tune. Boy, did he stink. Boy, did he stink. But he looked good. He had some nice deep passes to Cooper. All things are clicking. And then the Baltimore game happens. We're excited about this amazing comeback win, beating them at their own game with a field goal as time expires. Little did we know we were just about 48 to 72 hours away from having, everything flipped on its head and finding out Watson is out for the rest of the season. So we've got the defense had ranked highly in many categories. I'm not going to get on. I never liked, we're the number 1 defense. No, you're not. You might statistically have some things, but no, you're not. We could not handle a mobile quarterback. We couldn't handle anybody who could get out of the pocket. Russell Wilson beat the tar out of us. I'm trying to think which other quarterbacks were just shredding us up. I mean, even quarterback in Indianapolis that I can't the backup that we beat.
The backup. Well, I think just the backups were shredding our defense.
That's that too. That as well. And why I am having major brain cramps tonight, Mike. This is no good. This is gonna fit well into I'm getting too old for this segment.
You're right. Yeah.
But yeah,
it's because we're talking about the Browns. Sometimes they're hard to talk about, and some things should be forgotten.
That's true. That is definitely true. So this is a very important offseason. We're not going to have Chubb back for sure at the beginning of the season, and it's questionable as to when he will be available and how he's going to look at that juncture. Watson, in all he said, and between what Barry and then Stefanski have said in the press, it sounds like he's going to be ready to go for the start of the season. By game 1, he'll be ready to go. All is on track. That's, I guess, barring any setbacks, any issues. But right now, from what we know, sounds all good. The defense has remained pretty well intact. We haven't lost a lot, defensively. I'm looking at here some of the transactions, and honestly, I'm not. Again, I don't see that we lost too much defensively, and I think we made some nice pickups. What do you think about the Browns' offseason moves? Which, if any, have stood out to you?
Well, I like the Judy trade. Again, it was just a low-cost move for a player that has a ton of upside, and then we go and sign the long-term deal. So that takes some pressure off of the Browns in the draft to go and try to improve the receiver room right there. And then they re-signed, was it Tomlinson on defense?
Yes, Dalvin Tomlinson and actually, I think. Let me look here. I'm trying to think. It was Zadarius Smith. I think we already had Tomlinson locked up. Zadarius Smith, and then we also re-signed Mo Hurst, who was very much an impact player before his injury.
Yeah, so I think those are underrated moves. But those are really the key. I think what really makes any team go is offensive and defensive lines, to tell you the truth. And the fact that we are able to solidify some of those lines, we already know we have a great offensive line. We're going to have some guys back from injury on the offensive line, and then re-signing some of the defensive line there as well, I think are underrated moves, but are going to play huge dividends for the team.
Yeah, definitely. And the defensive backfield is still all intact, really. I mean, look, we lost AWalk, but he was injured a lot, so I'm not too concerned about that. Um, I think so. He still got Delpit, and he was playing phenomenal last year. He got injured. I mean, he really was a trooper coming out and playing in that game, the playoff game. Um, McLeod's coming off of an injury. He's certainly a good veteran, but to have Ward, Emerson at the lockdown corners, we need Newsome to advance a little bit. He needs to step up his game because teams picked on him, especially when he was stuck on the outside. And that's where I've got some friends who are very down and very hard on Denzel Ward because of games missed. Yeah, I think that the fact that it impacts us so much makes it so much more noticeable. And it shows the value he has to the team. And Garrett, even though he won Defensive Player of the Year, at the end of the year, he wasn't he didn't look right, and
the first time he's been a little worn down too by the end of the year. So I would love to see them get a little more help for him as well. And
yeah,
don't forget JOK either.
exactly. JOK, he really was fantastic for the Browns. I think you're missing the biggest signings here. I mean, we brought back Cade York on a futures deal. I mean, I don't know about you, but that just gives me, douche chills. And we did bring in some guys into the running back room because that's going to be significant. I know, or it sounds as if with the changing in the offensive philosophy, bringing in Ken Dorsey versus Alex Van Pelt, we may not be relying so much on the run game, but we've got to be able to mix it in. Ford had his moments, but I'm not sold. I think bringing in these other guys, Deontay Foreman and Nyheim Hines, that'll be helpful. And Nyheim Hines also, with the changes in the kickoff rules, along with Porsche, they will certainly be important for the Browns. We've got to see, though, like you said, we don't have to go early in the draft seeking a wide receiver. Between Cooper and Judy, you got three pretty good ones there. I mean, obviously, Njoku being a tight end. Cedric Tillman had his moments last year. Got to stay healthy. We'll see how this all breaks down. And I just don't want to see it where the biggest news of the Browns offseason, which I really don't understand, is changing the face masks back to white. How can you
Do
have?
What were they last year? I don't even remember.
I think we were still like brown or gray. I don't know, but again, as Kevin Stefanski said on his interview today, he doesn't care so much about that, but the fans, they love it, whatever.
Sure, nostalgia, but yeah, who cares?
Exactly. How about we win? I don't care what you wear, just win. Although I will say those uniforms that they debuted with that were terrible in the mid 2010s with Baker Mayfield, those were horrible. And though I was never so happy to see those uniforms go, even though they made no difference whatsoever. I guess they're guilt by association, I suppose.
Sure.
So we can't have that. So you got the face mask, and I don't know how you can return to a new era. I think is what the video said, the hype video. I'm like, how can you return to a new era or a new?
No, it's kind of like Back to the Future. Yeah, just got to think about.
Yeah, I don't want to think though. I try to think, but nothing's happening. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, Cleveland sports does that to you as well.
It certainly does. And then you've got obviously the ongoing issue in the news with the Browns. What are they going to do as the stadium lease is coming up soon, 2028? and the discussions are ongoing. And then you have a couple weeks ago this Cleveland councilman, Brian Casey, and it was funny because I'm listening to guys on ESPN Cleveland in the afternoon, and they were talking about the story. And the person, I think it was on a slip. I think it was Emmett Golden. He called him Brian Crazy. I'm like, yeah, you didn't intend that, but you nailed it there. Comes out and brings up the Art Modell law, and I don't know how much you saw that or read that, but to me that seemed like public grandstanding, and that's ridiculous. This is a completely different situation and circumstance. I think honestly, if the Browns want to get what's best for everybody, for the fan experience, for the potential to bring big events, I think that unless you can get a dome or retractable roof, an enclosed facility, if you can't get that on the lakefront, I don't think it's going to work there. If you have to go elsewhere, such as Brook Park, right out by the airport, that opens up a world of opportunity. I know it's going to be tough for some businesses, but I also think there's an opportunity there for the lakefront to be developed, not just by the stadium.
So do you remember Richfield Coliseum?
Absolutely. Spent many evening there.
The great palace in the middle of the cornfields with nothing there.
Exactly.
And I think of a dome in Brook Park. That's all I can think of. And that has me worried. I don't want another great palace of a stadium out in the middle of nowhere. I love downtown stadiums.
Really?
Whether
Okay.
retractable roof, open air, I don't care. Whatever you think's going to be best for Cleveland. I would love to have open air stadiums. I would love to have snow on the field. But
Really?
it's not because, all the snow melts anyways because everybody's got heated pipes under the grass of the field. So it's not the same. But they need to keep it downtown, in my opinion.
Okay.
One, they don't have to keep it on the lake if they don't want to, because you're right, that Cleveland needs to figure out what to do with the lakefront. Close Burke Lakefront Airport. That is some great property. Tear down the Brown Stadium if you need to. Develop that. I mean, what a missed opportunity that's been for Cleveland for the last 100 years. But keep it in Cleveland because that is another way that you can revitalize an area. I think Jacobs Field and Gundurina did that to that section of Cleveland before they developed that. And this is an opportunity where you can do that to another section of Cleveland if you need to. Put a stadium there, see what economic opportunities grow there. But it needs to stay downtown, in my opinion.
Well, we shall see. I feel like, okay, so here's my last spiel, and obviously not being there and not being privy to all the information, I don't know. The question is, so are there any other locations? If it's not on the lakefront, the problem with the lakefront is it's difficult entry and exit. Everyone complains about how hard it is to get in and out of there. Second issue is then, if you do keep it downtown but not there, is there any other land to develop down there? And I don't know the answer to that. It sounds as if that isn't a possibility. Then you talked about, like, I was traditionalist for a while. They're like, oh, you gotta love the open air and the cold and stuff like that. But then I thought about it and I'm like, if I want to take a long trip to go to a game, I don't want to freeze my tuchus off. So I hear you though. Whatever it is, I'm always, after we experience losing a team, as long as we've got a team, I'm going to be happy.
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
The bottom line. So we got there, and we shall see what comes up next week. It'll be big. Hopefully, I'll have some more clarity on what is going to happen in the NFL draft, and we will discuss that more next week. So I didn't want to sell them short, but let's talk a little bit about, in my opinion, the kind of the surprise of the early season, the Guardians. Guardians with another win today, another series win. They've only lost one series, and that was the one to New York, and obviously that was a tough matchup. The Guardians sit a game in first place, ahead of Kansas City in first place, 13-6. How impressed have you been with the team under a brand new manager, and losing Bieber after a couple of starts?
Very impressed. One, they've been doing this on the road too. Now I know they haven't been doing it like you said against, the hottest teams in the land right now. And I think I totaled it up yesterday. The record of their opponents are 49-62, but a lot of their losses because the Guardians played them and they beat them. But this team is reminding me so far a lot of the 2022 team that made it to the playoffs and was 92-70. They're young. They're winning a lot of close games. The difference being so far this year is that we have a little better offense that early on than we had in 2022, and we'll see if they can continue that. But right now, I think they are ranked, they're eighth best in OPS. They are eighth best in batting average out of all 30 teams, second best in run differential, and then even on the pitching, they have the fifth best ERA. So they're kind of right now an all-around good team. Now it's early, and we'll see what happens. But yes, to answer your question, I've been very impressed with what the Guardians have been doing so far.
Yeah, I have been. I told you this. It's been unexpected for me. I did not know what to expect coming into the season. I am a very harsh critic of the Dolans. I feel like they have let the fans down because they are not willing to bring in. First of all, they obviously they re-signed Ramirez, but Ramirez took an amazing hometown discount. But they don't go out and make moves for high priced players or people in their prime. They try and make these cut rate deals, and the last time we saw them make big moves was leading up to the 2016 World Series when you get Andrew Miller, you got Encarnacion. I mean, it was fantastic, but I feel like they're letting Cleveland down by not doing that and trying to rely so much on this talent. Last year, we don't know what would have happened. And the guys that they traded away at the trade deadline when we were a game out of first place was really a kick in the a kick in the family jewels, as it were. So I was a little bit upset about those moves, but we shall see. Stephen Vogt has really done a good job so far, and hopefully he can continue to do so. Guardians got another 3-game set this weekend with the A's, and then Boston comes into town, so they've got a chance to keep on winning.
And we will see when they hit a rough patch, which they will eventually, all teams do, how they respond. And I think that's going to be the key to this season.
Absolutely, and we're going to need. I just hope that our starters start to go a little bit long. They stretch their starts and they're pitching into the sixth and into the seventh, so we can give this bullpen a little bit of a rest. I really hated to see Clase out so much last year. It showed. He was wore out, and we weren't getting enough offense. So I think that it kind of can all work together if we've got a little bit more offense. We're not going to have to rely on Clase in, what do they say, high leverage situations. You're a baseball coach. You know about high leverage, right?
Oh, yeah. And, I'll tell you, what about the theme of Cleveland being injuries this year, too? Browns, Cavs, and now for the first few weeks of the Guardians season with Bieber out and the Guardians. So I don't know. I don't know if that shows Cleveland's cursed or what, but
I'm not sure.
all have persevered so far through them. So we'll see.
It really it has shown the perseverance, and we can't let that old feeling get in the way. Can't let that old feeling getting in the way. But we shall see how they do, and we'll have more to discuss as the Guardian season goes on. And speaking of, things not getting old, I wanted to this weekend I was outside with my son, and it happens. You start to figure out that I'm getting too old for this. And Mike, I wanted to, I brought this up because I figured out that I am now too old for this when it comes to playing basketball with my son. Apparently, not only has my jump shot left me, which was never great in the first place, my coordination, yeah, that's not so good either. So we're playing out in the driveway, and we're not even like playing one-on-one. We're just shooting the ball around. I decided to make a great heroic play to save the ball in bounds, as it were. I did a great job saving it in. I think my son said he made the shot. Jacob said he made the shot. But somehow I didn't stick the landing. And I did a face plant into the dirt.
Did anybody see?
Just my son. Just my son. So we're good there. But thankfully, no broken bones, nothing messed up or anything like that. But I think at this point, I'm too old for this. Have you had
Yeah.
experiences like that, Mike?
Well, yeah, I have them every day. The one I thought of when you mentioned this, and this is gonna sound sad, but it's sleeping in. I can't sleep in anymore, and I don't know what,
Oh,
like 6 o'clock rolls around and I'm up. And I kind of miss the days when I was in college back at Kent State and could sleep in till like noon. It just doesn't happen anymore.
no, it's awful. And I'll tell you what, Mike, my in-laws are retired and they can't sleep in. My father-in-law's like, I can't sleep in. I mean, he'll get up around 7, but I'm like, that's the dream. The dream is to sleep in.
And you can't do it anymore.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. My body clock, I will start getting up early and it's no good, but definitely we are getting too old for this. And I'll
Yeah.
say we'll have more as the shows go on here. So finally, Mike, one of our as the show title is, we are going nuclear, talking about things. And so it is that time on the show where we tell everybody what has us going nuclear this week. Mike, what has you going nuclear?
Okay, well, I'm going to stick with the sports theme, and you actually alluded to it already. It is no salary cap in baseball. I cannot stand how you have teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Giants that can buy their teams, and even if they make bad investments, they can absorb that and still compete every year. And then you have the smaller market teams, such as, well, Guardians for sure, but the Royals are a great example, where you have about a 2 to 3 year window with how you draft and your young players, and then you will not be in contention for another decade until you can rebuild the team. The other sports have it figured out. Baseball has not, and I love baseball, but it would be as simple as putting in a salary cap.
Oh, wow, absolutely, that is 100% on. I'm right there with you. I think that A, you have to have a salary cap. B, how about a salary floor? You know,
Yes,
it's crazy and how the rich seem to get richer, the poor get poorer. Look at the poor Pirates.
right. Another
They're
great example.
they're in the same boat. All the teams that are in the central divisions of the AL and the NL, we're all kind of in the same boat. The only team that's really had a lot of success was St. Louis.
Hmm.
For all those years. But yeah, I definitely has that makes me go nuclear quite frequently as well. So
And
I
what's yours?
okay. So this week, what has me going nuclear, folks, is the crazy fans on social media. Okay. And I say this because it's all the time. It's all the time. So you see someone do well, everyone posts, extend this guy now. Extend this person, sign this person, extend this person, pay that person, pay that person. Okay, they're just throwing around money, right? But then 2 seconds later, when a player, after they've paid them, does something wrong, get them out of town. These owners suck. What are you doing? Why are you paying them that? And I'm like, what is wrong with you people? What goes through your minds that you go from one extreme to the other? Everybody is down. They get so angry about a loss. They get angry about a win. As much as we're talking about it and debating it, there's a level of rationale that some people don't seem to have. And I guess that's the blessing and curse of social media, is people being able to immediately get their thoughts out. And there's really no repercussions for it. And that has me going nuclear. I couldn't believe all the people who were so excited about white face masks. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is important to you? How about we win? How about we win? And it'll be all good. But that, Mike,
Very true.
is what has me going nuclear this week. So, first of all, Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It is a pleasure having you on. And pardon me, as I have now gotten my voice all racked up here. See, I went too nuclear, and about to get choked up. But no, I hope that your predecessor, founder of the show, Madison Delaney, if she is out there, if she is listening, want to thank her for all of her efforts. And she's always welcome on the show. So, Mike, appreciate having you. This is wonderful, as we're both here in the Commonwealth, and you know, it's fun. This is a disaster of an area too for sports too, up in DC. So,
So true. Well, thanks
that
for having me. I've truly enjoyed myself.
absolutely. Well, can't wait till next week. We will be talking about the NFL draft, how the Cavs series is going with the Magic, and what's going on with the Guardians. So, for Mike Rasinski, I'm Ethan Greenberg, and we've been going nuclear, full blown coverage of the